Hello everyone, David Votta here, and I'm in the presence of none other than Mr. Keith Fraser. Now, Keith Fraser, for those of you that don't know him, is the founder of Cojones, and he's also a loyal landlord client of mine and has been for several years. So today, we're going to talk about two things with Keith. Now, the first thing is the launch of his new book, Cojones, Grow a Pair for Success. I have my copy here, and we shall be talking about that shortly. And just talking about life as a landlord as well. So, Keith, thank you so much for joining me today.
Good to be here, David. Nice to see you.
Thank you. And I suppose it makes a change, you being interviewed for a change. You're normally interviewing everybody else, aren't you?
Well, I try. I like to put people on the spot. But you know what? I've been in this position a few times. I don't mind being put on the spot. So you can ask away, and the difference between me and others, I'll give you an honest answer.
No, and that's what I love. I mean, you don't know what I'm going to ask you. I've obviously prepped the questions, but this is really putting you on the spot, and I love it. So, Keith, I've got your book here, which you kindly sent me a copy, and I am currently on page 38, and I've got to say, I'm hooked. Now, I'm one of those people like Keith that is very honest and upfront and says it how it is. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this book won't be for everybody. So if you don't like to know the cold hard truth, then it's probably not the book for you. But for me, I like it because Keith doesn't hold back and it's fascinating. So Keith, I'm 38 pages in, I'm hooked. Can you give everybody out there a quick summary on the book and what it's about for us?
Well, the book, it covers a number of areas, you see. I mean, we live in a world where in a few weeks' time, we're going to have Brexit. And many people think Brexit has come about because people want to take back control. You see, human beings like autonomy. You've got kids, you've got a baby. When you take away when you tell them to go to bed at night, for example, they don't want to go to bed. They want to decide. This is the whole notion of human beings. We like autonomy. Now, the thing is, supposedly we're told that Brexit is about autonomy, but I don't want to go down a political line. Let's talk about getting back control as a human being. We are told from a young age that we have to be a certain thing, behave a certain way, say only what you're meant to say. Well, I say no. I say no. The whole notion of taking back control is being what you want to be, doing what you want to do, and saying what you want to say. I say cojones is the whole crux of life. Why? Because anybody who's anybody has adopted those principles. They go for it. They don't let people say what they can't do. They do it. They're doers. And you look at anyone in history, anyone who's developed to the evolution of the world, like Steve Jobs, like Alexander Graham Bell, who were probably mocked at the very beginning. In the end, because of their cojones, their ability to step one foot out of that comfort zone and say to everybody, I'm doing it my way, okay, has led to the evolution of humankind and, of course, the betterment of society. And not only that, if you can be what you want to be, say what you want to say, do what you want to do, you're going to be authentic, you're going to be true to yourself, you're going to be a happier person. Now, if everybody did that, as opposed to be frustrated with the world, frustrated with family restrictions, societal restrictions, and we are freer, I believe the world will be a happier place. And if the world is if we as individuals are happy, there's a great saying that you can't change the world, you can only change yourself. If everybody went along those lines, the world would be a happier place. And that's what the book's about. And it involves a number of things. I've got my own Cojones 10 Commandments. I'm not God, but I believe that if you adhere to some of these, you will live a more authentic, happier life. And also you will go for it in life. You will seize the moment. You would be fearless. You will speak to anyone, approach anyone. And why shouldn't you? Nobody is better than you. We're all cut the same. And there's a number of psychological interventions. I've had a background in neuro-linguistic programming, transaction analysis, and all these tools that I have learned, as well as being involved in sales and studying what I call Cojones icons, who you know that I've interviewed as part of the research for the book, people you may or may not like, but have been ballsy in different areas of life, have contributed to what I think is the Bible and how people should move forward in life for their own happiness, and for the evolution of mankind.
I love that. What a summary. There you go. And do you know what? I read the back and it had me hooked straight away. And in, the first couple of pages is you're very humble in the fact that you make thanks to a lot of people, don't you? There's a lot of people you pay reference to, and you basically say, I wouldn't be where I am today without these people in my life. And I love that bit. I mean...
Well, here's the thing, David, I probably would be somewhere different if I didn't have certain people in my life as well. There's a lot of toxicity in everybody's life, and that includes family, by the way, who can be very negative, even if they don't mean to be. And in life, to go forward, we need encouragement, to give courage. And so, there have been some people who've been, who fortified me, and some people who haven't. But look, this is all part of our journey, I would say. And here's the thing. I'm not a celebrity that I know of, and yet if you look at the book on the front cover, I have, if you don't believe me, believe the people who's given testimonials. And the one guy who's one of my heroes, Arsene Wenger, the legendary manager of Arsenal, is on the front. You've got Barry Hearn, the #1 sports promoter in the UK, who's given testimonials, Alistair Campbell, the guy who's led right man, and others. So if you don't believe me, you can believe them.
Absolutely. And it's testament to everything. Don't believe what I say, listen to what my customers say. So excellent. So I love one of the strap lines, live authentically, fearlessly, and unapologetically, which is something you've just surmised there. But Keith, I've known you for several years now, and we'll talk about you being a landlord and that later on. But this first bit, I want to really get into the depths of the book, really, because that's what we're really here for. Because back in 2017, you were a guest speaker at one of my Property Mark regional meetings after you've done a few around the country. And I got some feedback from the ones you did around the country, and they said, well, that Keith Fraser, he's like Marmite. You either love him or hate him. And you embraced that. And I remember you embraced that feedback, right? And then at my regional meeting, you came along with a tub of Marmite and some crackers. And your opening line was, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to do and say is not for everyone. I'm like Marmite. You either love me or hate me. And I remember you offered those crackers and some Marmite out to someone in the audience. And that was a great icebreaker. So, with that in mind, why do you think some people feel that you're like Marmite?
Look, I'm very upfront. I feel like I'm very honest. I guess I'm quite opinionated. I don't suffer fools. And why should any of us do that? And, we live in a world where people don't want to hear the truth. People don't want to hear the truth. Look, people get offended by the most smallest thing. Like, I'm a sensitive guy. I'll be honest with you. I get offended. I get upset if people say things, whatever. But let's get it right, okay? There's an old saying, of course, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Well, actually, words can hurt you to a certain degree. But we have to learn to toughen up a bit, because the world is going down a place you can't pass wind without saying that you're not allowed to do that anymore. I mean, so look, the way I see it, Marmite's supposed to be very healthy for you. I personally am not a big fan of it, but I know loads of people who are. And I interviewed somebody for the Cojones Icons, which is one of the people I wanted to model. And he said to me that Ricky Gervais said to him that something like, there are loads of people who hate him. And this guy said to him, look, I think Ricky Gervais said to him, but you know what? I've got to focus on the millions of people who do like me, because if I focus on the millions of people who don't like me, I'm not going to do anything, and I'll probably get very depressed. And that's the truth, And here's a famous saying. It's probably in the book because I love my quotes. People, what's the word now? You wouldn't be offended, or it wouldn't bother you what people say about you or think about you when you realize how seldom they do. And so really, we need to toughen up. We need to start enjoying comedy like we used to. You think about it, the greatest sitcom of all time, Only Fools and Horses, arguably, that wouldn't even be aired today because it's so offensive to the modern day society. And yet, to me, it's the funniest program there's ever been. So I want to bring back people's authenticity. I want people to be themselves. Say what you like. I don't care if somebody, here's the thing, it's in the book. I was never a big fan of Jeremy Corbyn, as you know. But in Parliament, he said when Theresa May said something, he mouthed the words "stupid woman." Now, of course, everyone was up in arms, saying, "How misogynistic of him!" I don't think so. She's a woman, fact, and in his eyes, maybe she's stupid. What I hated most was the fact he lied. He could have said, "Look, maybe I was a little bit rude. I apologise for that." But that's my opinion. You see, be honest. So I'm saying you can be honest, but be authentic. And so why do people, I'm probably talking too much, David, here, so interrupt me. Marmite, concentrate on those who are going to, I guess, encourage you, love you. Yeah, listen to the critics to some degree. We all need feedback.
Of course we do.
But criticism can go too far. And I think, Marmite's a great thing. If there's 30 million people who read this book, believe me, I'll be happy.
Yeah, no, and that's brilliant. And only 38 pages in, I'm hooked, and I can't wait to get stuck in. So you've got my support, as you probably know already. So Keith, you've interviewed some big name people. So Judge Rinder, Lennox Lewis, Ross Kemp, Eric Bristow, Chris Eubank, Nigel Farage, Arsene Wenger. So how does Keith Fraser, go from being a chartered surveyor to, doing whatever you did before, to interviewing these big names? What made you have that transitionary period from your average sort of life? Not that it was average, but compared to interviewing these people, which are, you could call them celebrities because they have achieved stuff, haven't they, really?
Believe me, you don't have to achieve anything to be a celebrity. Look at those people on Love Island and all that. They don't achieve anything. And I don't really like the term celebrity because, to me, I don't put them on a pedestal. And that's the first thing. Anybody, we're all the same. You cut anybody, they bleed. That's the way I look at it. Yeah, I'm a qualified chartered surveyor. But actually, I haven't always done that. I was in hard sales for a while. I was doing telephone sales. I was selling advertising at $10,000 a page to banks around the world. And I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I ended up being the top salesman in that company. And that gave me tremendous grounding. If you can sell space, you can pretty much sell anything. But I've always been a bit of a showman. In the past, I've done some comedies. I used to do impersonations. I've also sung and played guitar in public. I've done some political stuff. But all that mixed together, it made me realize that I can do other things. And I noticed things about people. I learned some psychological stuff and understood, if you like, what makes people tick. So going from there to there, you asked me how I managed to come across these people. In sales, and you know this, David, you have to go to the decision maker. Okay, a lot of these celebrities have got agents, they're gatekeepers. So I just found a way to get to them direct. Now, obviously, I can't reveal all the ways I managed to do it, but the truth is, if you speak to the decision maker, you've got much more of a chance. If you can sell, there's no point in selling to the cleaner who comes in at night who doesn't have the decision. No disrespect to the cleaner, they do a very good job. But you need to speak to the man who makes the decisions.
What made you go from doing your normal day-to-day job to, do you know what? I'm going to start interviewing people. Was it all part of a process to lead up to your career, for Cojones? How did that transition work? What did you wake up?
Actually, I wanted to interview Cojones icons. I wanted to understand what they make them tick. And I thought, well, how can I do it? I need to go for some well-known names. And so I, used what I call social engineering. I looked at people. You see, people know people who know people who know people who know people. And, there's always a way you can get to somebody, David, always. And it's not sometimes easier than others. And I did have some connections. And eventually I managed to get some of these people's direct phone numbers, and I called them direct and pitched them and gave them the story. I understood how to dress up and pitch, and managed to get them on board. And it was provided tremendous research. And I've always been a bit of a performer, a talker, and I embraced it. I enjoyed it. And it formed part of the research of the book. And it gave me an idea as to what makes them tick. Again, I could say to all the people out there is Why would you put these people on a pedestal? Why would you be afraid to call them up? I don't. You give me Donald Trump's number, I'll call him up and see if I can get an interview out of him tomorrow. You cut them, they bleed. That's my motto.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think it's fantastic. So, what do you want to achieve? Or what are you hoping to achieve by all of the people that read your book? What are you trying to get into their heads?
Well, the first thing is, people are so miserable, aren't they? They're always saying, oh, I hate my job, I hate this, that, the other. Look, the truth is you've got your health, you've got your wealth, and I know that as well as anybody. But wouldn't it be great if people could be themselves? Again, say what they want to, be what they want to, do what they want to, and not have to conform to parental norms all the time. What your parents want for you, because it's really what they want for themselves. What your friends believe you can and can't do, and what society believes you can and can't do. Because without the ability to step one foot out your comfort zone and evolve and do better, the world stands still. So I would like to see people become more authentic, end this eggshell culture where you can't say anything because you're going to offend. Look, saying go around, say what you like. There are always softeners, more approachable ways of saying things. But we should not be walking on eggshells. We should be free to do what we want, be what we want, and say what we want. And that's the message.
Have you ever had anyone tell you you can't do something, Keith?
Loads of times throughout my life. And believe me, it stopped me from doing loads of things that I wanted to do in the past. And I now know, and I still have those voices in my head that come from them, but I now know that actually it's more to do with them than to do with me.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's almost like they project onto you, isn't it? So,
of course they do.
Keith, you do come across as a very serious, character when you first meet people. When I first spoke to you on the phone, I couldn't work him out. I thought this guy's quite serious. But the reality is, you are a bit of a practical joker and a big kid at heart. Now, anyone who hasn't really seen your work or even read your book as yet won't know that you have that side here. And you've got your own little YouTube channel going on where you're interviewing the celebrities, but you've also got some comical sketches, and they're quite interesting. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because obviously you don't like these cold callers, but again, you appreciate everybody has to do a job, and you've done some interesting calls to people over the years, haven't you, Keith?
No, I haven't done any calls. Actually, I've done some calls. There's a famous story, it might even be in the book, where, because when I was in the sales office, the people upstairs used to know me. They used to know I used to do voices. And I once wound up Alex Ferguson just a few hours before the European Cup final, where Man United were playing in Barcelona against Bayern Munich. And I was impersonating the late Bobby Robson. And all the boys were huddled around the speakerphone. And he was talking to me for about 10 minutes. It's a classic story. And then a few years later, when Bobby Robson passed away, so Alex Ferguson did a eulogy. He said, "Oh, it was great how he always he called me up before big games. He called me up before the Champions League final." Well, he doesn't realise it was me. But I guess if you like, I am a bit of a kid. I can embrace it now. I don't think I've quite grown up. But here's the interesting thing: if we could all be kids at heart. You think about it, when you're a kid, you like to play, you like to have dreams, and they are utterly quashed as you go into adulthood, aren't they? Because you have to be this, you have to be that, you can't say this, you can't say that. Just think about that. If we could all be kids at heart, and that feeling, that fearlessness, expressiveness that kids do have, how sort of free would we be? So I think that part of me likes to play, and I guess if you like, I'm a bit of a prankster because I get a rise out of it myself, and if it entertains others at the same time, then great.
Yeah, no, there is There's one I listened to with the guys in the office the other day about a gentleman. It seemed quite out of the blue, called you, and his surname was Griffiths.
That was the dog. I apologise.
Right, and it was about the snooker player Terry Griffiths, I think it was.
Oh, one second. Let me shut the door, David.
Yeah. So there's quite a few of these little comic strips online, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of cold callers. For some reason, I get loads of them. But you may say it's bad because, yes, people have got a job to do. Having said that, they're in the wrong job, in my opinion, because I've never been sold to by any of these people. They can't sell. So I guess, if you like, I just see it as an opportunity to have some fun. I once did one, you may have heard it, where a guy who was calling from India, he thought he was getting my credit card number, but it was all I was doing was mumbling nonsense. Yeah. And he was actually guessing my credit card number. It was utterly ridiculous, but caused storms of laughter at the time. I guess that's kind of my immature, just playful side. But, I don't mean any harm by it.
No, of course you don't. It's just a bit of fun. So, with all that in mind, so when you're not, a chartered surveyor, when you're not interviewing people, when you're not doing all these bits and pieces, what does Keith Fraser do to unwind? Now, I heard the dog in the background. I'm guessing that's got some kind of impact on your life. You're frozen.
Dogs. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. I'm back with you now.
Hello?
Yeah, got you.
Yeah, so we've got two dogs. We've got a little Shih Tzu Pekingese and we've got a working Golden Retriever. They give me a lot of fun when I take them out. I enjoy my sports. Actually, I don't know if you know, I also do a tennis podcast with the former British #1 John Lloyd every week, rock and roll tennis.
Yeah.
Only the other day we had Tim Henman on, who's former British #1 and number 4 in the world. I do loads of things to unwind. I don't quite know if I do actually unwind, but I do try.
Yeah, a lot of people do this. It's a struggle to relax. Well, that pretty much summarises it. Other than, Keith, do you want to tell people how they can get your hands on this book and what it costs and all that kind of stuff?
Well, they can't get their hands on that one, David, because you've got that one. So unless you're giving it away, they can't get their hands on it. But it is available on the 3rd of December onwards from Amazon, Waterstone, Smiths. Just go online. Easy to get hold of. And there's a Kindle version as well. And if you order it before the 3rd, you can get it cheaper. But yeah, I hope you enjoy it. It's funny. Sometimes when I had to read it back, I thought, blimey, did I actually write this? So I hope it's better than even I give myself credit for. But listen, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Hopefully you'll give us a good review, and so will others.
Absolutely, no, and I'm very much enjoying it. It's very straight talking. There's no mess, and it is what it is, and it does provoke that. It's very thought provoking because it gets you thinking about the society we live in today, and it is, what do they call it, a snowflake society sometimes. And things. So I really enjoy it, Keith. So thank you very much for that. Also, because we've got a bit of history, you've been a client of mine for several years. I want to talk about your experience as a landlord. Now, you have a few properties. We look after properties for you as well. And the world's changed a hell of a lot in residential lettings. There's hundreds of bits of legislation. There's lots of government intervention, and it's not always for the best. So I just wanted to run through a few bits of you with your experience as a landlord, because obviously that's my specialist field. And, there are frustrations we have as agents, which, are also projected by you as landlords as well. So what first made you become a landlord? What made you invest in the property sector?
Look, as a chartered surveyor, this is if you like, the investment vehicle that I understand more than any other. And of course, look, bricks and mortar and land is scarce in resource, so there'll always be a need for it. And of course, I thought that by cleverly investing using bank money as well, then I could build it up. And it has built up, of course. So the government has done, I think that's a disservice. See, landlords get a very bad reputation, and of course there are some rogue landlords out there, but there's plenty of rogue tenants.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, when you own your own property, right? If my light bulb blows, I'll go and change it myself. You'd be surprised how many tenants, as you know, they say, don't tell the landlord, he needs to send to an electrician and pay for it just to change a light bulb. I'm probably perhaps being a bit facetious, but
You're on the right
it's
line.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You understand what I mean? You know, a lot of people say, oh, poor tenant, poor tenant. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of landlords who I feel sorry for, including myself. You have tenants who trash the flat. And in some areas, some like the ones that I'm involved with, because nowadays the government have put such restrictions on landlords, you can't take more than a 5-week deposit. We've had situations where tenants have trashed the place and their deposit doesn't even cover it. And then of course, the deposit is hard enough to get back anyway, because for some bizarre reason you've got to agree it with the tenant. It's all a bizarre situation. I think they're trying to kick the small-time landlord out of the market, and it's very unfair because anyone who's trying to build a kind of nest egg for themselves is being restricted by the government. Let's get it right. Pensions and other tools are not particularly worth investing in, and property has been the best performing, but I don't always buy it that landlords are the rogue ones. There's many rogue tenants, and it's not property. And let's say I've got an income of £10,000 rental income, and I'm paying, I don't know, let's say hypothetically speaking, 5,000 in interest to the bank. Previously, the profit, the 5,000, obviously that excludes repairs and stuff, but the profit would have been taxed. Now, taxed on a whole lot. Well, you get a bit of tax relief.
Tax deductible.
It's
Yeah,
ludicrous.
Well, that's going to phase out completely as of next year. And this is another thing that these landlords, as you say, are almost being discouraged from investing in the sector. You know, they're trying to prevent homelessness, but yet they're not doing anything to encourage landlords. In fact, they're being discouraged, which kind of leads me nicely onto, you know, how do you feel it has changed since you bought your very first buy-to-let investment? How do you feel that the landscape's changed from since then to where we are now today in 2020? I mean, you know, COVID, you have to factor that in, but how do you think that's changed, like for you as a landlord?
Well, in certain areas that I'm involved with, I have found that unfortunately rental values have not gone up in line with capital values. And if you have a model where you borrow in order to get a cash return, of a high cash return when interest rates are low, then it's not so easy. At the same time, like I said, the government has brought in all these restrictions, only a 5-week deposit, not easy to get your deposit back. Now with COVID, trying to, you know, get a tenant out after they're not paying their rent. We've got situations, haven't we, where tenants will just suddenly all of a thought, well, they've cottoned on, I don't need to pay my rent and no one's going to kick me out. So effectively, the government has legalised squatting. So it's made it very difficult. And you know, you shouldn't, look, you've got to help those who don't have. I'm in a very fortunate position, not as fortunate as others, but more fortunate than many. And you have to help the people less fortunate yourself.
Yes, you do.
But that doesn't mean that you should always punish, and I mean punish, the people who do their best to, and take risks, because I have taken risks, take risks to try and build something for themselves, which is what Cojones is, by the way. It's partly taking risks and going for it. But if you've got Big Brother, which is the government, saying, sorry, you can't do that, you can't do that, not only are they going to quell people's natural wanting to better themselves, to grow, you know, they're actually going to harm society. Because I can tell you something, in London, where I live, the amount of areas that have been gentrified because of overseas investment into the new build market, buy-to-lets, has been unbelievable. You've seen areas, places such as Hackney, and places like in the Docklands and all sorts of areas which has been gentrified because people have decided to invest. It's the same for people who live here. And if you quell that, if you stunt that, those areas, and if you would have stunted that, those areas would not have been gentrified. So you have to embrace risk, because unfortunately in the capitalist society, risk has to be taken in order to grow. And if you stunt that, it's bad for the economy, bad for people, and actually bad for this country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny you say a lot of that. You've covered off a lot of my other questions, which is good. But basically, the point where we're getting at is that all of these restrictions and bits in place, they are deterring landlords. I mean, if you look at the Section 21 notice now, it's now 6 months notice, you know, and if you really delve deeply, you think about, so say for example, your tenant fell into arrears, a lot of landlords will only serve notice on a tenant if they feel the need to. Now, there's not many landlords out there that will serve notice on a good tenant. I mean, you as a landlord, Keith, have you ever said to me, David, oh, you know, those tenants are really good, they're paying their rent, they're looking after the property, I think we're going to have to serve notice? It doesn't happen, does it?
No, I mean, I always say to people, and look, I've been involved with commercial rent reviews in the past, and of course, a lot of them retail, this is in the past, and I said to landlords, you know, don't rock the boat.
Yeah.
If they're good tenants, they're paying their rent, okay, don't rock the boat. And I guess people you, they deserve to be good to back. It works both ways. When you walk along the street and you smile at somebody and say good morning, inevitably, 99 times out of 100, someone will smile back at you and say good morning. It's the same thing. You're good to people, they should be good to you back. Not always, as we know. There have been many rogue tenants who have been good to and been patient with, who it's almost like you give them an inch, they take a mile. Yeah. There is that. But generally, you've got to treat people, I think, as they want to be treated. And yeah, it works both ways.
It's interesting because, you know, I believe, you know, because I mean, I'm a servant of both masters. You know, I've got a contractual obligation with my landlords to provide a service, and I've got a duty of care to tenants. So for me, I'm a facilitator of a relationship, and I want the relationship between landlord and tenant to be good. And if either party aren't honouring their contractual obligation, funny enough, that relationship breaks down. And the point I'm trying to make here is a tenant can see that little niche in the marketplace where, you know, they can withhold their rent and they can get another 6 months during COVID or what have you. They can then leave the property. If the landlord hasn't got any rent guarantee and legal cover to cover those costs, then the tenant could then leave the property and then get away with not paying 7, 8, 10, 12 months worth of rent, especially now, the way the courts are backed up. Now, in some instances, you'll have tenants, and we've seen them before, Keith, where they come across as genuinely nice people, they've fallen on hard times, they've got a bit of bad credit, and you know they won't pass the referencing procedure we put in place on the back of we've fallen on hard times. But then we're like, do you know what? We want to help people out. We want to be seen to work with tenants and go the extra mile. And then it comes back to bite you in the end. So you can't underwrite the rent, you can't protect your investment. All you're left with is a tenant that you've given a chance to then, you know, get shafted, for want of a better word. Now and then we're now in a situation where we as an agent, we're getting calls daily from tenants that say, do you accept tenants on benefits? And we say, we do. As a company, we'll accept tenants on benefits, providing they got the necessary credit rating and guarantor in place. However, there are landlords that we work with that may or may not do that. And when you're in a situation, Keith, like we are now with COVID, you'll have one property, you might have 6 or 7 viewers lined up for that. The landlord will always pick the tenant that's got the best prospect. Now, it's not discrimination. It doesn't go against the Human Rights Act. It's a simple case of a landlord is running a business. And let's face it, renting property out is running a business. So a landlord's got to make that commercial decision of going with the best tenant. Now, these tenants that are slowly ruining their credit rating and doing this, they move on from property to property, and there's no real accountability. Now, with certain reference checks, you can reference a tenant and they'll come up on a database from 7 years ago and say they didn't pay their rent on this property. However, there'll be ones that slip through the net and play the system. So with that in mind, and the fact that Rishi Sunak has now given the bombshell that he's been given the green light to up capital gains tax from 28% to 40 to 45%. If you were in front of a government official or the Chancellor or anyone now, and you were the voice of landlords for the whole of the UK, what would you say to them?
Well, I honestly believe that the government don't really understand the market.
No.
Who advises them? I mean, you would have thought the RICS advised them, but they don't realise that you're punishing the people who actually are trying to better themselves. And it's very, very difficult. Start off at 40, 45%. It's very, very unfair. I mean, at the same time, it's like, if I make a profit, I've got to pay 40, 45%. What if I make a loss? Are they going to pay me?
Yeah, exactly.
Of course they're not. Of course they're not. So basically, you get punished
for doing well.
Mm. That's the way I see it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay your way. We've gone into a very difficult situation. The government has been basically borrowing money left, right, and centre since March because of this COVID situation. Very unusual times. However, they can't go about, but they've got to find ways not to punish the same people, i.e. the man in the middle, the motorist even. They just like to go for the easy target. Where can we get money from most? And look, it's just very, very unfair. And I think if you quell investment, you're going to damage the economy as well for the future. You're going to damage the infrastructure because at the end of the day, it is on private investment that helps to create jobs and helps to create and improve infrastructure. If you quell it and then you also stunt foreign investment, it's not going to be good for the economy either. So he's got to balance this out, and he's got to look at it in a much more pragmatic way. I really do know. I think it's going to have repercussions.
It will, certainly will. We're seeing them already. We've seen the detrimental effects of, we look at the Tenant Fees Act that came in last year, which wiped out 25% of an agent's income. That's a big loss to a business. For the government to say, we're going to tell every business in the UK, estate agency, letting agency, that they're going to lose 25% of their income. They've got no say in the matter, which is quite unfair. But we sucked it up. We've had to try and find revenue in other forms. So that means that 25% income we lost has got to come from somewhere. Now, if we can't charge tenants, that means, unfortunately, Keith, you as the landlord have got to take that on the chin, which means, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm being charged an extra amount of money to set a tenancy up or management fees. I'm now going to increase my rent. And in the long term, the person that suffers the most is the tenant, the very person we're trying to protect. So instead of saving, I don't know, an average of £350 in reference and administration costs as a tenant, they're then going to pay an extra 50 quid a month each month for the lifetime of that tenancy. So in time, when you work it out, they could be paying 10 times the amount of increased rent instead of an initial set-up tenancy fee, which again, it blows my mind. And then you're going to have the next thing will be rent caps. So they're going to do what they did historically and cap rents. I can see that coming. They're already talking about banning Section 21, so a landlord can't, swiftly get possession of their property again. So they need to, and like you said earlier, they're not listening to the people that know what they're talking about. Who is making these decisions? And you mentioned RICS, and they do, and Property Mark do, and the National Landlords Association. All of these people feed into the government and give them information on what they should and shouldn't be doing, but they have to listen to that information, because let's face it, how many government officials have been a tenant or a landlord and a letting agent and seen the whole process all the way through? The beauty of me is I am a landlord of one property, modest one property. I'm also a letting agent. I bought and sold properties, and I've also been a tenant. So I've explored that entire journey, and I know exactly what is happening on the front line, on the coalface. So it's a tough one, but I just want to go on to another point. So
can I ask you a question then, David? Is there a lobbying organisation that lobbies the government in this? Because it seems to me that nobody is lobbying the government in favour of the, if you like, the small investor who are looking a way to protect their future. Is there any form of lobbying?
Yeah, there is, and this circles back to my point. So us at Arla Property Mark, we lobby the government constantly. We've got a policy team that always write to the government, you know, we've written to the Chancellor, constantly lobbying. You've got the other associations, which we mentioned, National Landlords Association, RICS. These are all different forms. So National Landlords Association is specifically for self-managing landlords that want to go it alone and have that bit of support. Arla Property Mark is solely for accredited professional agents, and then you'll have RICS as well, which you know about. So you've got all of these people lobbying the government, so much so we've almost joined forces to try and get that message out there. But the trouble is, it's a numbers game. I mean, you know, we will send out a survey to 9,000 members and probably only a couple of thousand will return it. Or, you know, a lot of people, like you mentioned earlier, will play the victim. Oh, I'm this, I'm suffering, I'm that, I'm that. Well, then they need to have their say. And one thing that's probably got me to where I am today is, as you know, I'm very vocal about doing the right thing and what's happening on the front line. And the trouble is, you could do all the lobby in the world, Keith. It's whether they take any notice. And you know how political these decisions can be. So yes is the answer, and it's incredible. I mean, I've written to my MP numerous times.
You know what I would say, David? Sorry to interrupt you. You've got to go to the decision maker, mate. And and you may laugh at this,
no,
but I would look to try and get hold of the highest person you can. It's a trickle down effect. Okay.
So
sending an email to your MP, you may or may not get an answer. If you could literally, I know it sounds long shot, and it is a long shot. If you could pick up someone high, it's a long shot, but you've always got to go to pitch the highest person you possibly can, I would say.
Perhaps that's a little project for you and I together. Get you an interview, get you in front of them, and you can really grill them.
Well, funnily enough, I did speak to my MP about it because I know her. I talked to her about mortgage tax relief, which she said was a George Osborne policy. And she totally agreed with me. She said she was going to pose the question in Parliament. Fat lot of good that would do. But yeah, you have to go to the very top and keep bashing on doors and getting hold of that person, because I think that's the only way. If you don't go to the top, then you're going to get fobbed off with someone low down who really doesn't have much sway.
Decision maker, yeah.
It's the trickle down effect. I honestly believe in that.
So you have a son, don't you?
I do.
How old is he?
He's 7.
And what's his name?
His name's Raphael.
And who's he named after?
Well, I'm a big tennis fan, as you might have heard earlier, and so the inspiration for the name came after the great Rafael Nadal.
Yeah.
And I tell you, if he had Raphael's in life, if he had Rafael Nadal's spirit, never say die attitude, and also that ability to be humble and gentlemanly, it's a pretty good role model.
It is. It really is. So he's your son, you know, he is the heir to the throne, so to speak. So obviously what you're doing, and what a lot of us fathers do, is trying to enrich the lives of our children and benefit them for the future. You know, you've taken some huge risks in your life and financially, and you do want them to pay off, and you're doing your bit. And we've spoken about the government deterring landlords and bits and pieces like that. So how do you see the future for your son? You know, you're seeing that being a landlord is not so profitable, and you are selling up some of your properties as a consequence because of this, and looking at restructuring your model. So how do you see the future for your son panning out?
Look, you know, you have economy goes up and down. Policies change, you know, from one moment to the next. You know what? If there's one thing I just want for him, is to take some of the messages from my book, to be unafraid, to go for it, be authentic, just to do what makes him happy. And if he does that, he'll find his own path. He'll find the right path, I think. Whether that be in property or elsewhere, he'll find the right path. And as long as it's the one that gives him peace, tranquility, and happiness, then that's all that matters, really.
Well, that is the ultimate goal, isn't it? It's not always about the money. It's about finding that happiness,
of course,
which a lot of people struggle with. Keith, it's been an absolute pleasure. I want to thank you for your time today. It's been really
Thank you,
fascinating. And thank you for writing such a good book, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't bought it already, I highly recommend it. I am only 38 pages in, and I can't wait to get home tonight just to read the rest. Keith,
Can I ask you a question though, David?
Go on.
Sorry to, you said you highly recommend it, but you've only read 38 pages.
Well, if the first 38 pages, are that good, I'm hooked. So
okay, well,
the rest could be terrible, but the first 38 pages have been exceptional.
And of course, I recommend you as anybody's managing agent, letting agent. Of course, we might have our disagreements at times, but the main thing is that you are professional. You know your onions. There's no question about that. And there's a lot to be said for that. So keep it up.
No, I appreciate that. And we're a team, aren't we? We're both working for the same goal, and we have to do it together. So that is the journey we're on.
Exactly. And let's hope that 2021 is a happy and healthy one for us all.
Absolutely. Keith, you've been fantastic as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you, mate.
Take care.
Cheers, David.
Bye-bye.
All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, we'll stop recording now.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, that was good, David. It went on quite a lot longer than I expected, but that's fine. I didn't want to keep you.